is Dr. Shelley Martinson, and today I will be sharing some tips for preparing and performing Ferling's Etude in E minor. So tip number one is to develop an excellent fundamentals routine that you do every day. This should include not only scales, but also long tones and harmonics as well, because you want to sound your best not only in this etude, but in everything you play. So an exercise like the one included on your screen, which is a variation of one by Moïse from his De La Sonorité, it's going to help you develop consistent intonation, more control over your vibrato, and a wider dynamic range as well. So do practice your long tones with a tuner on your stand. Not only are you learning your tendencies in terms of pitch, but you're learning how to make those corrections as you go. Also use this opportunity to practice vibrato using wider depth and more narrow depth, as well as changing the speed. So I also will include a harmonics exercise in case you don't have one in your repertoire of tools. So you can pause the video here to try this out. So you're fingering this bottom note and overblowing to get these higher partials. This will help you develop more airspeed and also more flexibility. Tip number two, so practice with your metronome and with subdivisions. So my tempo on the recording I included here was about 54. You can certainly go a little bit slower, and you can count the eighth note or you can count the quarter note. Initially, you definitely want to at least be very strongly subdividing the eighth note, and those subdivisions will never entirely go away. So by subdividing, I mean that you're really counting the smaller units of time within the beat. An example of how you could subdivide the first measure is you could actually re-articulate the eighth notes in that dotted quarter note. So for example, since there are 3 eighth notes in a dotted quarter note, I would tongue that E 3 times. So for example, 1, 2, 3. So that can really help you solidify your understanding of the rhythm and to make sure every unit of time is fully accounted for. Not only is a lyrical etude a chance to show your beautiful tone and your musicality, it's also a chance for you to really show your rhythmic abilities. So it's usually very clear whether a student is subdividing when they're playing a lyrical etude. So taking it a step further, in the second measure, we can subdivide the 16th notes. So I'm going to tongue 3 16th notes on this E dotted eighth note, since there are 3 16ths in a dotted eighth, and then I'll actually tongue 2 16ths on each of the eighths. So let's try that here. 1, 2, 3. And I can even put that together, so I can subdivide 16ths for the first 2 measures entirely. So I'll have a total of 6 16ths on that E dotted quarter note, and then 2 on each of the eighths. So let's try that together. 1, 2, 3. I wanted to highlight a couple of rhythms that might be causing you questions. So the first rhythm comes from the first half of the piece, and this contains 30-second notes. So 30-second notes, there are 4 30-second notes in each eighth note beat, or 8 30-second notes in each quarter note beat. So I recommend counting the eighth notes initially and taking it a little bit slower. So if we're to slow down to count the eighth notes, I'm going to put my metronome on 85 right now for the eighth note. We'd have 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 5 and 6 and. So it's very important that you count out the rhythm first. So if you can't speak it out correctly, it will be very difficult to play it once you've added the technical side of things with the fingers as well. So once you feel comfortable with the rhythm itself, just take small groupings. So for example, let's just take the first eighth note beat here. 1, 2, ready, and. Let's do that again. 1, 2, ready, and. And once this feels comfortable, I can go on to the next eighth note beat. So I'm starting on the E sharp now. Note that it is an F sharp here. It's in the key signature, but not included in this example. 1, 2, ready, on. 1, 2, ready, on. And then I can start adding them together. Be particularly sure to practice the transition between the 32nds and the 16ths. So we'll have 2 16ths for each eighth note beat, 5 and 6 and. Let's just try that here. So we're starting on the C, B, D, C, and then going right into those 16ths. So we have 4 and a 5 and 6 and. 1, 2, ready, and. So break it into those smaller groupings, and then you'll gradually speed it up. So again, this is a little bit under tempo, but we're still within range. And once you feel comfortable counting the eighths, at that point, you can move into counting the quarter notes. Next spotlight is a spot that includes several ties. So ties are a spot that many students will get themselves into trouble. It's really easy to move a little bit earlier, a little bit late. And a great way to practice this is to actually re-articulate the tie. So I would tongue right here instead of slurring, and the same thing here. So counting out loud, again with the eighth note, we have 1, 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and 1, and a 3, 4, 5 triplet, 6 triplet. So initially just tongue those ties to get used to the proportions. So note that these are 30 seconds. So we have 2 30 seconds in the span of 1 16th note. So 1 and a 3 here. So going on to tip number 3. So really exaggerate dynamics and use vibrato to show where phrases are going. So again, this etude is a chance for you to show off your musicality and your ability to express. One thing to be aware of is that on flute, we tend to be flat when we're playing soft, particularly in the middle and lower register. So really practice keeping that air fast as you're playing. Keep the tuner on your stand as a point of reference. One great way to work on this is to actually hiss as you're playing. So I'm not using my normal tone, but I am using my normal fingerings. So I'm putting on the metronome here, back to our 56. Ready, and so this will help you feel more comfortable with keeping that air speed or consistent air pressure. Tip number 4, remove the ornaments initially and then add them back in one by one. So I'm looking particularly at the third measure, and each time we have ornaments like these. So go ahead and just take out the ornaments. So we'd have 1, 2, 3. Then maybe we just go to add this B, so the grace note before the final beat of the measure. Then once we feel comfortable with that, we add the other graces, which you've practiced out of context slowly first. So you can even practice recording. So you can record yourself playing without the grace notes and then play along with yourself with the metronome, because we don't want to change the rhythmic framework. That will remain the same. We're just adding those grace notes in after that B on the and of beat 2. Another spot, in case you're not familiar with turns, we have a turn here. So you'll start on the principal note D, go up a note to E, back down to the D, down to C sharp, and then return to D. And do know that there's a mistake in the score here. So this should be an E natural 3 measures after the turn, and that carries through in the grace notes. Finally, I do leave fingers down on these C sharps when I have a D or a D sharp before and after. So like on that turn. So on my C sharp, I leave 2, 3 down to simplify the fingering a little bit there. Same when I have those turns after the trill. So this just smooths it out a little bit. Finally, if your E's are prone to cracking, I do recommend taking off the pinky because that helps with stability. And always the middle register D and D sharps need to have the first finger up. Otherwise, you're playing a harmonic note, not the actual fingering when we're in the middle register. Finally, record yourself all the time. I recommend incorporating recording on a daily basis, even if it's just 1 or 2 measures at a time. The more you really have that feedback and know exactly what you sound like, the more it will benefit you. Finally, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. I also have a handout and some additional notes I'm happy to share with you. So I hope this was helpful and best of luck on your audition.